Welcome to another episode of PowerMove Makers. This series was created with a simple goal in mind: to bring to the table high-level executives, successful entrepreneurs, and just all-around inspiring human beings. Not just focusing on their successes, but more important, shining a spotlight on the road that they traveled to get there. Now, this week's guest, he might be the realest brother that I have ever interviewed on this show. And I don't just say that casually. I love his spirit. I love the way he walks and he moves with so much integrity. Someone who comes from the same place I come from, which is the South Bronx, did his thing in rap music. And now he is an activist. There's so much to his story, but overall, he is a great personification of what it is to be a Black man living in America in 2020. Please welcome to this week's show, author, rapper, activist, Mr. Mysonne Lennon. Mysonne, welcome to the show.
How you doing today, King? I appreciate you, man, for that introduction, and I'm just blessed to be here, man. You know, just especially in these times, man, being able to be healthy and being sane is a blessing. So thanks for having me, brother.
Nah, thanks for your time. I know you got a lot going on, and we got a lot to discuss, Mice, because you are, and I don't know if you tried to be, and you know, we'll unpack it as we, you know, have this conversation, but you're a real role model, but you're a different kind of role model than so many of your fellow rappers, so many of the people who are in the public eye. Before we even get into your backstory, is this something, your activism in particular, is it who you've always been? Or is this something that somewhere along your journey, you found that there's a cause out there that's greater than me and I need to stand up and fight for it?
I think subconsciously and unknowingly, this has always been who I've been, you know, coming from the Bronx and growing up in marginalized communities. I was never someone who liked injustice. I was the kid who fought the bullies to protect the people that was picking on, you know, and you had to be rough. You had to be tough. You had to have some level of strength or you was prey. So I grew up in that era. I grew up with that mind state my whole life that I wasn't going to be oppressed. I wasn't going to be the person that you picked on. I was going to stand up for myself, whether it was me against 100 people or whatever. I was going to always stand up for myself. And I think that was instilled in me early from my father at a young age and my grandmother, who always told me, you know, you have to defend yourself. You can't allow people to take advantage of you. So that's always been my mind state. You know, I was never a bully. I was never someone who picked on anyone. I never looked for trouble. And even when we was in the streets and we were doing things that was deemed illegal or criminal, it was never my moral compass. Even when I was doing illegal things, it wasn't something that I enjoyed, you know. And most people I know that when we were doing things, it wasn't things that we really enjoyed. We just felt like it was a sense of desperation and we had to do what we had to do to survive. But I always feel like my spirit connected to Martin Luther King's and Malcolm X's, and, you know, I would watch old war movies and just felt connected to Denzel and Glory and things like that. That's always been where my spirit was, you know. That's always felt like what I wanted to be, connected to that type of change and that type of energy. So, you know, I just think it was just a natural, you know, evolution of me as a man and as an individual, to where I was actually, the minute that I was actually introduced to what activism was, you know, because for a long time I thought activism was something different. Even when I attached myself to the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolms, you know, I just felt like, you know, there was more religion and it was more based on just being a preacher and things of that nature. And I never, to me, religion was something that I adhered to, but it wasn't my end all be all. You know, I was more of a spiritual person than a religious person. So a lot of times I didn't feel like it was for me to walk in that path, you know. So when I started to realize that activism was not connected to religion, it was connected to your moral compass, you know, being a good person, just somebody who wanted the right things to be done, who wanted to live in a society of equity and justice, you know. And when I realized that I could look like me and be where I come from and still be connected to, you know, to our communities, to hip hop culture, and still have that same stance, you know, I think that's when it started to dawn on me that, and because it wasn't normal, that, you know, I didn't have to fit into a mold, you know, in order to someone who wanted to stand up and fight for civil rights. I didn't have to look or sound like anybody. I just had to do it the way that I did it.
Well, I think that's what's most attractive about you. And I think that's what is attracting the legions of people to what you're doing, is the fact that you're doing it your way. You're not selling out. You're not pretending to be anything other than what you are. And I think when people are authentic and they're very transparent about what their motives are, it's something inviting about that. People are attracted to that. And, you know, even hearing you, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about, you know, the civil rights era with the Kings and Malcolm X. Yes, you're right. It felt like, and I never really thought about that. It felt like religion was at the nucleus of what they were doing. And to see you out there, you're doing it in your own way. You're still very real, very thorough. You're still very much a rapper, but you're going at this civil rights thing and you're making change, not compromising who you are. So I love that about you. And that's why I had to get you on this show. Before we move further, was there anybody in your family? I know, you know, I'm a guy who's raised with 6 brothers in my house. So my mom, my family, my dad, they brought us up very similar to as you speak. Was there anybody in your family who was an activist? Anybody who, you know, outside of grooming you to be a man of integrity, was there anybody who was like, no, there's a greater cause out here, you need to be fighting for our people? Or is that part, just that part right there, something that you found as you got older?
Yeah, I don't believe, I mean, not to my knowledge, was there any active civil rights activists or even practicing within my family. My family was just really big on integrity. Like you said, like that was the main thing, you know. They're from the South. My family comes from the South, and we were big on integrity and authenticity and just being who you are and being comfortable being who you were and not trying to fit into anything else. You know, that's the main thing. My grandmother, who was one of my, you know, major influences in my life, used to always say, do your own thing. Like, you know, you don't follow nobody. Don't be no follower. You be a leader. You do what you want to do. And if they don't want to do it, then the hell with them, you know. And that always stuck with me. You know, it was hard times, you know, because when you be friends with people, you want to fit in, and then sometimes it doesn't work. So, you know, but as I got older, I got so comfortable in that space, you know, just being who I was unapologetically, you know. And I think activism was one of those things that just eventually just pulled me in. I think it was a calling. I think, you know, we all have purpose. I think activism and that was always my purpose. Like when I think, because like I told you, when I think back to what I was attracted to in the movies, I always was attracted to the hero, the person who was willing. Like I used to watch 300 and see Leonidas and be like, the man was willing to die with 300 people. Like that's something for me is honorable. Like don't matter what it was, how many he went against, he knew he was dying for something that was right. And win, lose, or draw, he wasn't going to sacrifice that, you know. And that always was my mind state, you know. And so I think activism was just my natural calling.
Okay, so I want to talk to you. We spoke about integrity. It's well documented. You spoke about it on 100 different interviews. Mm-hmm. You get locked up, 20, 21 years old. You're very young. You're a signed artist at this point. People would give their right arm to get a record deal. You didn't just have a record deal, you had a bidding war at the time. Mm-hmm. And you get locked up for a crime you didn't commit. Mm-hmm. So, you know, just kind of glossing over this and taking the shortest road you possibly can. Can you help my audience who may not know your backstory during that time understand what landed you in jail and how much time you served?
In 1998, I was signed to violate the Def Jam. RIP to Chris Lighty. I had just signed my deal in 1998 after having a bidding war, as you said, with pretty much every major label. But prior to that, I had been arrested in 1997 for an armed robbery charge of a cab driver. And so, just being in the hood, not very educated of the law, not really understanding all of what comes with it. You just thinking you innocent, you don't go to jail. And so I'm going back and forth to these court dates. They just pushing it along because that's what they do. They said, come back in 2 months. And you're like, all right, this is going to go away. Come back in 2 months, So I had originally just got arrested just being in front of my building for a situation that actually happened with people from the neighborhood. And, the guy said that I was the person who robbed him, which was complete false. So, I'm just going back and forth thinking it's going to go away. And actually, me and the guy had met up a couple of times, and he apologized. He was actually trying to drop the charges, but the system doesn't really allow you to do that. Once you make a statement,
it's you versus the state. It's not you versus the individual.
Exactly. And then they start threatening the individual, saying, if you take away this statement, then we hold you in contempt of court for lying. Gotcha. So they start doing playing all types of dirty games. So I'm going back and forth to court right after I get my record deal signed early 1999. That's when I ended up going to trial. I took it to trial because, there was no evidence. There was actually no evidence of anything other than him saying it, making an original statement, trying to change it. Then they picked up some other cab driver who had got robbed and made me go through a lineup. And he said that I looked like the person who robbed him, but there was nothing to connect me to any of these crimes other than some person saying I did something. There was no evidence that I was there. There was no anything. And actually, when I look back, I know for sure the second robbery that they said that I actually did, I was in the Hit Factory. That's that night, or pretty much all night. But just being ignorant and not paying attention and just thinking you just don't go to jail for shit you just don't do. I didn't go to the stand and saying, we need to go get these videotapes out of this. We need to go get all of these things to prove. That wasn't something that I did. And in hindsight, I look back and I'd be like, I should have been way more intentional, way more serious about it because it was a serious situation. So unfortunately, in July of, in June of 1998, I blew trial and was sentenced to 7 to 14 years.
How old are you at the time?
I was 21 years old.
21 years old, signed to a record label. Mm-hmm. You're doing something honest. Did the courts not have any understanding of that at the time? Was it not people from the record labels who wrote letters on your behalf? Was it not people who came and said, look, I don't know what's going on here, but the person I know is a young black man and he is doing something that is positive and he has a big future in front of him. Did none of that mean anything in your case?
It really didn't at that point. We went there. The DA was trying to get a name, and I think the fact that I was a hip hop artist was something that he wanted to have under his belt. He wanted to be the person who locked up a hip hop artist, Wow. So that was something he wanted, that level of notoriety. So even, we went to sentencing and was trying to just get it postponed so that, I could at least finish my project, shoot videos, just do this. They weren't open to any of those things. you know,
Wow.
and mind you, there was no shooting, there was no nothing. Even in the cases, even though I wasn't guilty of them, there was no real harm in any case, you know. So, but that's how the system plays, and that's one of the things that led to my activism, just being incarcerated for that.
And I want you to stop there because I don't want to get to that part of your story yet.
Okay.
Number one, was you ever offered a plea?
Actually, prior to everything, when the first case happened, they offered me a year.
Okay.
A year in prison for it, but why would I do a year for a crime I didn't do? Why would I sit in a year of my life for a crime that I never committed? You know?
And the reason I asked you this, you know, you're a public figure, a lot of notoriety. There's a face attached to your story. But there are millions of other young African American, Black and brown males who are out there. And this is happening every single day. Yeah. Because even if you have been guilty, did I hear you right when you said you were sentenced to 7 to 14 years? Was this your first offense, or were you a predicate felon before this?
I never had any prior offense.
So your first time in the system, you, like most people, believe the system works for us. I know I didn't do this. I know I wasn't there. And the second thing that you just dumped on me, I'm in the studio. Not just any studio, but the Hit Factory at that. That's a legendary studio in music and entertainment. So I know I'm gonna win this. When that gavel hit, what's going through your brain? Like what do those first few hours look like for you when you like, damn, I just blew trial? Like, how do you reconcile that knowing that you're an innocent man and all that you was about to just lose?
Yeah, it was a very difficult situation. You know, the minutes before the gavel hit, and you know, you sitting in the courtroom, and there's they're asking questions. The jurors are sending back charges, and they're asking, what does these charges mean, and what does this mean, and then, you know, the lawyer pretty much can get a feel of what's going to happen. So I remember in that time, the jurors was asking, what are these, you know, the stipulations for this kind of crime? What is, you know, what are the criterias for armed robbery in the first and armed robbery in the second? What are the differentiations between the two? And they would read it back to them. And I remember in my mind realizing that they actually believe you guilty of something. They just don't know exactly what it is yet, but they're saying you guilty of something. So, and I asked my lawyer, and he was like, pretty much. So prior to them even saying that I was guilty, based on the questions that the jurors was asking to be read back by the judge, I had already knew that within a few hours or whatever, you know, I was going to be found guilty. So I remember after they did that, we went out to lunch, and I got on the phone with my man Tone, who was managing me at that time, who was like my partner, and I called him because he wasn't there, and I was just telling him like, yo, I'm pretty much sure that I'm going to be found guilty. You know, I had just had my son. He was 1 year old. And I was just like, just make sure you take care of my son, man. I don't know how much time I'm gonna be in here. You know, just hold him down. I'm gonna be all right. You know, I'm not going to break down or whatever. And he was just like, nah, how do you know this? And I was like, I just know. I just feel it. You know, I was talking to the lawyer, and I remember we were just on the phone. It was like, it was surreal. It was just like, you know, but I had that amount of time just to prepare for a few hours, just like, you know, and my son was there, and I was holding them. And I remember just, you know, just like, I'm not crying, I'm not breaking down here. I'm not going to give these people the satisfaction of just seeing me here crying, you know, going through all of that. So, you know, I remember just saying to myself, all right, it is whatever it's going to be. We just got to figure it out, you know, and we got to deal with it. You know, I don't know how we got here, but this is it, you know. And remember after they said I was guilty, and the DA just looked at me like he was looking for me to show some, you know, he wanted to seem like he broke me, you know, and I just looked at him and just, you know, and just took the time, you know, just took the guilty plea. They wouldn't allow me to bail out. They wouldn't allow me to go home with my family for days or prepare anything. So they just immediately remanded me into custody. And then it would be 7 years before I would see the streets again.
Damn, it's a hard story to hear. But the reality is, coming from our circumstances, it's just all too familiar. So I'm listening to you, and whereas my heart breaks for you, I mean, we deal with this every day of the week. Mm-hmm. This is our reality as young African-American males. So you get sent 7 to 14 years. This is 1998 or 99?
99.
This is 99. So you don't hit the streets again till about 06. Yeah. Who are you inside? And the reason I ask you this is for a very specific reason, right? You're my son. Mm-hmm. Got a record deal. You know Puff, Lighty. You did records with some of the biggest of the big. You're going to be tested. You could go in there and easily, I got to make a name for myself. Like they got to know that I'm thorough. Did you take that road and wild out? Or did you immediately come to an understanding that I just got played by the system and now I got to educate myself if I'm ever going to be a benefit to any of the other young brothers and young sisters that find themselves in the same situation?
So I went there, you know, and I say this all the time, man. The fact that I went to prison at the age of 21 pretty much saved my life. And the fact that I had a record deal pretty much saved my life. The fact that I had so many things to live for and so many people. I had a 1-year-old son. Like, I had experienced a level of life that 3 or 4 years prior to that, had I went to prison, I would went there with that exact mentality that you had. I got to make a name for myself. I'm not going to let you do nothing to me. Whatever I got to do, whoever I got to cut, whoever I got to fight, whatever I got to do, that would have been my mentality. But coming from the streets, just from being in the Super Bowl and just from being at dinner with Puff and Chris Lighty and just from being, you know, supposed to the day after I got locked up, I was supposed to do the Vibrant Thing remix. But I never made it because I got locked up that day and I was supposed to go to, Chris had called me like, yo, tomorrow you got to go do the Vibrant Thing remix. And, you know, just knowing that, and the Violator album was just about to drop and I was just heard my song on the Rough Riders. I was just on the float at the Puerto Rican Day Parade with Big Pun. Like just understanding those realities for me when I got in prison, saying to myself, like, it's way much more for me to lose in here. Like, I'm not going to adapt to my surroundings. I'm going to have to make my surroundings adapt to me. You know, I'm not going to be no punk. I'm not letting y'all do anything to me ever, but I'm not getting involved with prison politics. I'm not getting involved in who's the toughest person. You know, I'm going to establish myself as a man, you know, but I have way too much to lose. And every day that I allow this system to beat me, you know, every day I don't learn something, I don't grow mentally, physically, emotionally, the system wins, you know. And that was my mindset. I'm not going to let the system beat me. And I had a lot of, from the first day I got in there, you know, some people knew who I was, but I had a lot of elders, you know, a lot of OGs that, you know, because I was always somebody who paid attention and listened. You know, I didn't talk much. You know, when I talked, I had something to say. I didn't just want to be loud or heard or seen. So a lot of the elders would take me under their wings. The OGs was coming and be like, yo, young blood, and just schooling me and just telling me like, yo, don't fall into the pitfalls here. Don't get involved with these gangs, and don't get involved with the drugs and the gambling. You know, you mind your business. You do what you're supposed to do. If you got to handle something, you feel like you got to get it on with somebody, you handle that, but don't fall into prison, because this is not for you. This is not what you're trying to make your life. You know, you got a lot going for you, man. And you going home. You're not here forever. So you don't have to make this place comfortable for you. You don't have to make this place your home, you know, and that stuck with me, you know. And I had I had family members visiting me every day. So I never got comfortable in prison. I never like, I got to make this my home. I always made myself uncomfortable, so I knew I couldn't stay here, you know. So I did what I had to do. I worked out, you know, I wrote rhymes, I read, I educated myself, you know, and I surrounded myself by people who had like minds, who had the same morals that I had. We wasn't with no gang, but it was just a few of us, you know, and we were strong and we were respected, you know, because the way we carried ourselves. And if it was a situation occurred, you might have to have a fight here and there. That happens. You shake your hand, you go back, you know, and we handled it that way. But for the most part, you know, I don't think most people tested me, because I never gave off an energy for me to feel like you had to test me. Except, you know, there's a corny here person who just jealous because they hear your name and they want to try to get some rep off of you. But even those, for the most part, you know, we ended them civilly, and if we didn't, we ended it with some level of respect at the end of the day, you know. So I just always carried myself in a manner that which I would give you respect, but I demanded the same respect.
You know, there's so much happening in the world, and I hear you say again and again how you can end conflict civilly. You're tested in gladiator school. You're locked up. Your measurement of a man on the inside is brawn. It's how thorough you are physically. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily this. Wow, you're still a young man.
But it actually is mentally. You know, you think it's physically because that's what you believe. You believe that until you start to realize that it's mind over matter, you believe that every conflict has to be ended physically or has to be addressed physically. You know what I'm saying? I think what people understand, nobody really wants to conflict with somebody who's equally as willing to go where they want to go. That it just doesn't do. If me and you know that one of us gonna end up dying here, you know, it's just like U.S. and Russia, right? The reason why they don't go to war is because we both got atomic missiles and we both could blow this whole shit up. Now doesn't make sense. Is what this situation that we about to beef over even worth that? You know what I'm saying? And I think, and that's how most situations happen in prison. You know, when you real young and you're not aware, you find them getting into beefs all the time. But when you start getting older and you see the older thorough dudes, they have a conversation in the middle, like, okay, so how do we end this without it turning into this? Because we both know we willing to go to that. That's beyond. We put enough work in. You know where I'm willing to go. I know where you willing to go. So how do we end this so it don't have to go there? And if not, then cool. But the first thing we're gonna do is figure out how do we end this before we have to tear this whole jail up, you know. And that's how most of the time it is. You know, when you get into discrepancies in jail, there's somebody who they test you. They want to see what's gonna happen, and immediately you have to respond like, okay, so what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? Okay, you want to fight? Because we can fight first. I'm not going to get everybody sent out to jail. We ain't stabbing nobody. We go in the bathroom. Let's get it over with. Boom, boom. And at the end of the day, we shake our hands and we go on. And now we have a newfound respect, or we don't respect each other. But we understand that what it is. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes diplomacy and being smart most time it overweighs the physicality in prison. They respect you when you're smart. They go to the OGs who figure out how not to engage in conflict, not because they scared, not because, you know, they have any fear. They just smarter than that. And they know most of the conflicts that you get into can be resolved without even getting into some physical confrontation.
Yeah, you said something earlier that I love. You said during your time in there, you never got comfortable. Actually, you kept yourself uncomfortable because you knew I was going home one day. I got a number. I don't have a letter.
Mm-hmm.
But at 21 years old, 7 years can seem like an eternity. 7 years can feel like it ain't gonna never come. So I applaud you for listening to the OGs and having a level of intelligence at that very immature time for most of us to understand, like, look, 7 years, whether I'm in here or out there, they're gonna come and go. So let me just do it right and not let this system beat me. So I got a question for you. Now that you're on the other side of it, and there's so much happening in the world, much of it that you're on the front lines for in terms of change. You doing all that time on the inside, what does prison reform look like to you?
Prison reform for me is ending, the racial disparities that put only our people in prison. Understanding, like you said, that this was my first crime, and I was a young kid with a promising future, and not being given the ability and opportunity to do something different other than going to jail. You know what I'm saying? Not having programs and things that eliminate prison for youth. That's what prison reform looks like for me. How do we limit the reasons and that disproportionately affect our people in our communities? Because we're the main people inside of prisons. And if you look at what we're going to jail for and the amount of time that we spend in, it don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And that's why when you look at the fact that, okay, they're saying, oh, now drug crimes, we want to eliminate these people who've been doing 20 and 30 and 40 years for drug crimes. It never made sense. And it only disproportionately attacked our communities because we were the person who most of these people were addicted to drugs, whether it's selling or using. It was, it was a level of addiction, and nobody understood it. Nobody cared. It was out of poverty. Now that we have, these opioids that are affecting a different demographic, that's what made the change, because they're like, oh, there's a lot of white people who are going to jail for drug crimes now. So we have the criteria, this is a health issue now. It's no longer a crime. These are health issues. They're addicted. But when crack cocaine was destroying our communities, it was the worst thing in the world, and everybody who was involved in it needed to go to jail forever. So we understand the realities. But the thing is that since they're starting to recognize all of these situations, we have to be very vigilant about demanding that, the crimes, because you see them. The crimes that you given the young black boy that you call a violent crime because you say he had a gun that never was fired, and he might have stole $20 and $30 from somebody. So now that gives you the reason to give him 20 years in prison. See, this is the thing that they say. Violence to them is anything that could equate to it in our communities. Violence in their community, somebody actually has to die. You got to get shot. That they can act. They have kids who are going to college who have rape charges that they say, we're not going to send them to jail because we don't want to ruin their school. We're going to give them programs. Those, we don't have that. So prison reform would make it look the same way it does on their side as it does on our side, and not, completely throwing away our kids who are making mistakes, because first of all, poverty in itself is violence. We look at all the violence that's going on in our communities, and a lot of people want to say, oh, we just bugging out. It's not that simple. When you come from the communities, you understand that the trauma, and the things that we're dealing with, you understand that poverty gives you a sense of hopelessness, and when you feel like you're hopeless, you're going to do whatever you got to do. And then when you got people feeling like they fighting over territory because this is how we feed in our family, and everybody can't feed their family on the same corner, so it turns into, I got to show him I'm tougher than him in order for me to eat here. And it turns into wars. And then, and those are the things that happen. These happen in anywhere where poverty is. You don't see, affluent black communities. You don't go to affluent black communities where people are not living in poverty and see blacks committing violence. It just doesn't happen. So we have to look at the root cause of what these things is. So when we talk about prison reform, we have to start reforming the things we're actually locking these kids up for. We have to start changing the need for the crimes that they actually commit. You know, we got to start putting the resources back into the communities so that kids don't have to commit crimes. They're on corners making $200 and $300 a week selling drugs. They're not even making no money. But if you gave them a job to make the same thing, they would rather do that. You understand what I'm saying? But they don't have the other option. So eliminate the reason for the crime, and then you can eliminate, then that's what you call prison reform for me.
Okay. And I love that answer, by the way. Mice, you're well-spoken. You know, just in terms of your demeanor and your stature and the way you speak, people can easily look at you, say, hey, he's the exception. You know, he's not one of them. You know how we always hear our white counterparts, I have a black friend. You might be that black friend now. But they look at everybody else as savages. This person has a propensity to commit crime. I look at this person and I'm afraid of him. Can you give briefly an understanding to somebody who might not come from where me and you come from? They're not from the Bronx or any of the Bronxes around the world. Is everybody in jail savages? Is everybody in jail? Because you didn't even belong there. You didn't even commit the crime. So could you take a second? If you're not speaking to me, you're just speaking to a broader audience.
And I say that
everybody in that prison population, what they think they are, because I know it to be different.
Yeah. And the reality for me is that's a very good question, because it is one of my biggest arguments. And I have this conversation with brothers from our own community who have made it out. And they make it worse because they look down on the brothers who didn't. And I say to myself all the time, and they be like, oh, well, you did it. And I said, we are the exception. We the ones who actually made it out. We're not. The rule is most people don't make it out. And it's not because they savage. It's because the opportunities they didn't have. And luck. You know, the bottom line is people say, I wasn't lucky, I worked hard. I said, well, you could have been the Central Park Five. You know, you could have been Akeem Browder. Like, it's not about you working hard. We all work hard. You think people don't want to get out of these conditions? You think a brother that sits there and figure out how to make a drug empire wouldn't want to make that same empire something legal? You know, I said, when you look at Jay-Z, you look at 50 Cent, you look at people who actually had other opportunities when they got out the community and they was given another way to do something, you see how they maximized on it. I teach courses, I teach educators. They say, why aren't we able to grab the minds of these young black geniuses? Why do people like Jay-Z and 50 and T.I. and all these people who probably never graduated from junior high school and high school, we see that they have genius level talent and intellect, but why aren't we able to gravitate to it? And I said, because you don't understand the dynamics of what's going on in their homes, in their lives. They don't have, I broke down yesterday, you know, we did our Street Politicians podcast, and we were talking about what goes on in our communities and how by third and fourth grade, I was dealing with so much inner turmoil in my home between drugs, domestic violence, poverty, you know, all types of things in my household, that by the time I got to school, I couldn't even really focus on that. I didn't sleep the whole night. We was in a police station because my mother and father was fighting, and I had to go there and the neighbor, stay at the neighbor's house. I was scared to and then now I'm got to go to school, and you telling me that my behavior is off and I'm this bad person, but you don't realize the trauma that we deal with every day, you know? So what I would say to people is that you can't understand it. You know how many rich people go to jail? I've sat in there with millionaires who they're doing probably a year, and they're in the same facility that I'm doing, and they saying and they become part of this community. I'm like, damn, I didn't realize what was going on here. Most of these people that you would call savages are the ones protecting you and making sure you're good and educating you and showing you how to move through this facility without somebody killing you, and you like, damn, I didn't even understand. I looked down upon this community. I looked down upon black people from where you from, and then they start to realize when you put in the same situation, you're going to react the same way. I tell people all the time, poverty creates a level of desperation and violence that you will never be able to identify unless you've actually dealt with it. So it's not anyone being savagery. The same mentality that you celebrate in your army, when you call this person a general, these same kids, if they went to the army, you would call them generals. You would call them Purple Hearts. Because they have the same level of fearlessness. It's just put to something different. And they feel like this hood is America for them. This is where they was born. This is what the only thing they connect themselves with. These people here have made them believe that this is all we have and we got to fight and die for this. The same way America has made the soldiers in the army believe that we got to go out here and fight, go to different countries, no matter who we got to kill or whatever, you're doing it for honor. And that's what they've been taught about in these communities. So when you say savagery, why you don't call the Purple Heart soldiers that they tell you killed all of these soldiers in war and you come home and celebrate them? They have the same mentality.
Damn, Mike, you preaching.
It's the same exact, because I've been there. I've been on my block and say, you're not going to come here and terrorize our block. This is our block. We willing to die for this block, whatever it's going to take. It's 10 of us up there. When they come up the block, we fighting. Somebody might get stabbed. Somebody might shoot. And I felt I was doing something out of honor. I looked at my man and said, I'm going to protect you. I'm willing to die for you. You know what I'm saying? We have that same mentality. So when you give us something else to fight for, when you give us something that's positive to fight for, when you change and retrain the mind state and you give us, just basic human necessities to survive, we don't feel that sense of desperation. We can put that same, integrity. That's why people say, oh, you go by the street code. For me, it's a code of integrity as a man, being willing to stand up for what you believe in, stand by whatever you did, and handle however it comes. If you can't do that in the streets, you can't do it nowhere else. You can't be my partner in my business. If I don't trust that you got my back, that you're gonna stand by me, and whatever comes with it, I don't want to deal with you nowhere in life. So it's not just a street code when you talk about not snitching. If me and you are partners and they try to tell you, listen, you need to say he did something wrong in business to save yourself, and you willing to do that, it don't have nothing to do with criminality. It's just about integrity. It's about, this is my man, and whatever it is, we did this together, and we're going to deal with it however we got to deal with it as men, and he knows that I got his back, and I know that he got mine. So I tell people all the time, man, it's not the individual, it is the circumstances that create the individual. There's nobody born savagery, especially not in our communities. That's not who we are. If you talk to most of the most notorious people, I know some of these most notorious gang affiliated brothers who are the most humble, loving people you'll ever meet. But when they put them in the jungle and they were surrounded by the lions and the bears, they wasn't going to be prey. And that's just the mentality. So give us different community, give us different circumstances in our community, change the circumstances, and you will see the individual change.
I love that answer, man. I love that answer. And I can promise you, when I release this video, that is going to be a segment I put out. Very good perspective and insight. Talk to me about our people, for lack of a better way to put it, siding with the oppressor. I watch, and it pains me, Black and brown Trump supporters. Mm-hmm. I watch Kanye West. Huge fan of his as a rapper, producer, but his politics, I don't understand it. This man's wearing the red hat. Now he took the red hat off. He denounced Trump and, he's running for president himself. Like, what is your thoughts on individuals that look like you, but side with the oppressor, knowing that there's so much work to be done and all this work that you're fighting for and change for our people, and they're working directly against you?
For me, there's a quote, that everybody that's your skin folk ain't your kinfolk. you know, and that is one of the realest things. A lot of people, like brothers like Kanye, who are educated, right? They're the 10%, you know, and the minister talked about it the other day. He said there's the 10% who prey on the ignorance of the 85%. You know, they know that you're ignorant and you don't know. Most people don't know anything. They just follow the trend. So they figure out how I can blood suck and capitalize off of it. It's not about their people. It's about how do I individually capitalize off of something. And Kanye is one of those individuals. He's done it throughout his life. He's attached himself to whatever it was, or he became whatever it was that was going to make him relevant at the time, whether it's going completely opposite of what everybody is saying or being at the forefront of what everybody's paying attention to. He's made a living off of that. So siding with the oppressor to him is something that separates him from everybody else. It makes people have to pay attention to him. He enjoys the attention that comes with it. He's figured out how to profit off of it, and that's what he does. If right now one minute he's I'm a sick fuck, I like my dick sucked, and then next thing you know, he's dropping a gospel album and it's church on Sunday. He does whatever it's going to take to get people to talk about him. 1 minute Bush don't like black people, and then he's with Trump, who's worse than what. So he has figured out how to galvanize attention, you know, and that's what a lot of people do. And then there are just people who just care about their individual situation. They don't care about the betterment of everybody. Look, me and my family is good, you know, and Trump is going to create these tax breaks that I fit inside that tax break. So I'm supporting Trump. I don't care if 90% of the people don't get none of that, or the laws that he's going to implement is going to marginalize 90% of the black people, or the judges that he's putting into office are definitely going to make sure that every little black boy that goes to jail does 20 and 30 years. Because while he's telling you, oh, we letting, you know, we doing prison reform because we're going to let the people that got drugs out, but we're going to be so much harder on violence, on what we call violence. Because I sat in jail for 7 to 14 years for some of a quote unquote violent crime where nobody was hurt. So now what you do now is not going to be 7 to 14. It's going to be 14 to 21. Because now that they're letting out the people who they say is nonviolent, they got to keep the people that they quote unquote call violent in there for longer periods of time. They're not opening, you know, they're not opening individual jails, these private prisons. They haven't fluctuated in, you know, when Trump went to office and the stocks for private prisons went up 110% by accident. They not, you think that they know what they doing. This is a by plan. So now what happens is you just got to stay in there longer. We're gonna let these 7,000 people out, 8,000 people, because those 8,000 people, we don't need them. We ain't gonna have space in them. We're gonna make sure that these kids that come in here 14 and 15 because they had a fight and one of them had a knife, and we call it gang assault now, because everybody who had a fight and it's a gang assault, now they got to do 40 years. So we ain't got the revolving door. We ain't doing no more installments where you're doing 2 and 3 and 4 years. Now you're doing 40 straight years. So you think you did something, you know, and so Trump has tricked you into that, and he gave you a stimulus check, and you thought everything is good because your business fell under the criteria, and they said, look, Trump has done the best for black people, and they trick you with this dumb shit because he knows how to play the game. He's been around black people his whole life. He's been about making money his whole life. So he understands how to make half of you people that think that you got $1 over lunch meat feel like something is happening because you're willing to sacrifice for the greater. You don't care about everybody else. You just worry about your own personal interests. And that's what they've done with most of the people who support Trump. The blacks who support Trump are only talking about their own personal interests. They say, look, I can get this loan and I can get this and I'm able to do this. Look, it works for me. You know, you ain't worried about, can't worry about everybody else, you know, and that's how, and it doesn't frustrate me. It's just that I'm aware that those people exist. You know, I understand that they're not on my side. They don't speak for me, but he'll make sure that they have a platform to continue to spew that rhetoric and continue to talk to somebody whose interest is money, because that's what we live in a capitalist society. So capitalism, and people don't realize that capitalism cannot survive without a poor class. It's just impossible. Capitalism is based on the fact that one class of people are going to have nothing while other people have everything. And that's what it's based on. So as long as the people who actually think they got out and made something are feeling like they got something and they don't care about the rest of us, is capitalism can continue. You know, so I understand my enemy. I understand that people that look like me are going to be my enemy. I understand that I'm fighting for people that as I'm trying to row the boat, they putting holes in the boat. And every time I fill one up, they put another hole in it. You know, and that's the reality that most of our civil rights, that's what Malcolm realized. That's what Martin realized, that most of the people he fighting for was attacking him and against him because they didn't even understand the fight.
And you touched on so many good things. I almost don't even know where, because there's so many quality points that you brought up. But I guess I'm going to go, let's talk about Mr. Trump, right? What people don't understand, is he a racist? I believe he is. Mm-hmm. Actions have shown me he is. But more than anything, he's a capitalist. His thing is about classism. And when I see people who look like us, black and brown people, who support this man, I don't understand it, but from a bigger standpoint, him being classist and a capitalist, all these white Americans who don't make a certain dollar amount, who are out there supporting and fighting for and waving that flag, make America great again. Do y'all understand? He would not sit at your kitchen table and eat with you because to him, you're beneath him. You might as well be black and brown because for him, it is capitalism. And I think back, we talked about Kanye, and it's interesting that you really pointed out the distinction between his antics and so many others, because essentially, it comes down to capitalism.
That's right.
This is the way I act. I act like this for a reason. It helps to bring a stream of money in whenever I can go against the grain. And if that means selling my own folks out, wearing this red hat, being controversial, saying things that you guys feel is sensationalism, I'm willing to do it. Because ultimately, it's the same motives as Mr. Trump. It all feeds back to my bank account. Wow. Speaking of bank account, talk to me about the power of the black dollar. We recently saw the blackout across America, the economic blackout across America, July 7th, where people were told, look, support black businesses. Do you think more can be accomplished in terms of activism and helping our people get to another level if we only supported one another, or at least show the bigger establishment that if we pull our dollars for even one day, your bottom line will be affected?
I think that is the key to our, what it is that we look for, the equity, the justice, and all of those things that we talk about that we want as Black people. The key to it is us establishing ourselves economically and as a power, showing that we can be on one accord for one day or just for one situation, because when you can see if anybody, just during this time of the Black Lives Matter movement and showing how you look at organizations that have received donations from just Black people, and you see how quickly it immediately raises money. Whenever Black powers, superpowers, as a lot of the athletes and artists and everything speak up and say, hey, this is what we all doing at one time, that immediately shifts a level of our economics, So when we get on that page and we say to ourselves, okay, this is what we're doing, and we're, and the powers that be, the people who have voices, who have platforms, say that we all doing this at one time, you know, that you will see a complete shift in the way America deals with black people, because at that point they will understand unity. The unity that the black people have, they understand the power, they just haven't seen it unified. They know the power, and that's why they keep us divided. That's why they'll have Kanye, you know, they'll promote Kanye saying this, and they'll promote Terry Crews saying these things, because they need that. They need that, those level of people that infiltrate and grab some black people with them, you know, and the Candace Owens and all of them. They need those people to seem like they represent black people, you know. And if we decide and say to ourselves, like I say all the time, it's not about uniformity. That's not doing we don't need uniformity. We need unity. We need people who have power, who
Stop
have
there
voice.
for a second. Stop there, because I want to highlight that. Go back. Say that again slow. The difference between uniformity and unity.
Unity is people who are united for one goal. Uniformity are people who are doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. I don't need you to do what I do. You understand what I'm saying? But we all got to have the same goal. You got to play your part. It's like a basketball team. Uniformity is everybody playing the point guard. We don't need everybody playing the point guard. Teamwork is, I need you to get the rebound. You know what I'm saying? I need you to shoot the three. I'm going to run the ball up. We all have to do our own part. And it doesn't have to be the same way. You don't have to play your game the way I play mine. It just have to figure out, how do we play in the same game, different ways to where we win. And you might drive around the block we all going to the same destination. And we all know we have to get there. You know, it's just like, we have to realize, like being in prison and we was trying to break out and we was all chained to each other. And you might have a different religion than I have. We might not, but we know we need to get out this prison. So the bottom line is, today we got to work together, because our same goal is to get the hell out this prison. So I don't care if you think about Allah, you think Jesus, you an atheist. None of that matters right now. The only thing we worried about is the one goal we have is to get out of prison. And that's what it is with black people. I don't care if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat. I don't care what you're, you know, partisan. I don't care about none of that. You know that if your goal is to the liberation of black people and getting equity and getting what we deserve as black people, then we're on the same team. And they divide us in so many different ways. You know, we just have to be unified to say, listen, the bottom line is that black people need to get to a level of equity that we have not seen in this country. And we have a unique opportunity right now to get there. So I don't care about your personal beliefs. I don't care about what you think or how much money. If you believe that black people need to be treated fairly and require justice, then that's all I need you to do. And tell me what you're willing to do to get to it. And I'm going to say, okay, you do that, and I'm going to do this, and we're going to put this all together, and we're going to get to the same place.
Question for you. I got to say, I'm so proud of this generation that has gotten beat up for the majority of their life, meaning the millennials. Everybody felt as though they were entitled. Everybody felt that, you know, they weren't hard workers. But truth be told, it was those same millennials and Gen Z who were out there on those streets marching for change. Those were the ones who were on the front line, and it just made my heart proud. And when I look at people like yourself, I admire you. You're putting the burdens of our community on your shoulder. It's what you do. You're an activist. But for people like me, who might not be on those front lines, what can we all do to play our part, as you say? What can people who are not going to be marching in those streets, what can people who are not going out there and willing to be handcuffed and sent to jail because it sends a louder message to the establishment? How can we help the movement in our own way?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways. You know, there are some people have platforms like yourself interviewing me, giving me this platform to be able to, you know, tell people what it is we can be doing. You know, it's other people who, you know, Harry Belafonte was funded Martin Luther King. You know, he was he was one of the first artists, part of the movement. And he funded Martin Luther King. He utilized his platform to talk about what Dr. King was speaking about. So there's so many different ways. Everybody just has to figure out what is it that I'm possibly. Maybe I just have a Facebook account to where, and I have 1,000 people, and maybe I can't make it to the march, but I want to tweet out about it. Maybe this organization that I know that's doing the work in my local community, you know, that I know about, they might need some people to join. Maybe I can tell people to join it. Maybe I could donate, you know, invest. I don't like really the word donate. I like invest because, you know, our organization, Until Freedom, you know, is an organization which we created roughly over a year ago. And we decided that we wanted an organization that represented what it is that we are. You know, the way that you spoke about how my activism doesn't look like something else, and it's just authentic and it's unique. I wanted people like that to feel like they had a space in this movement, and you know, and that's what we did. So whatever you give to our organization is an investment in our own freedom. You know, it is an investment in our freedom because we want to stay independent of corporations and things like that funding us. Because when you get funded by corporations, then you have an obligation to their needs. You know, you can't say certain things because, you know, these are people paying your bills. That's what happens with a lot of our greatest civil rights leaders today. You know, they started out independent and then they needed to pay bills. And then corporations was the ones that said, okay, well, we'll fund you, but you can't say this and you can't do this. You know, and you definitely can't be on outside advocating against this, you know, so the voices start getting lower, you know, the respect in the community diminishes. And then, you know, once again, they figured out how to divide and conquer us again. So that's one thing that we're very, you know, adamant about is being supported. When I say I work for the people, it's literally, you know, I want my voice to always be authentic, or I don't want to be a part of it, you know. So yeah, we need all of that. We need people who are willing to stand with us. We need people who are willing to advocate with us. We need people who are willing to financially support us. We need, you know, boots on the ground. We need some people who only know how to do the internet, who, you know, it's so many different ways, man. And you just got to know what it is that your strong point is and how can you contribute to the movement, you know, and how and what organizations and what individuals best fit what it is that you want to relay. You know, there's so many different organizations that are really doing this work that are grassroots on the ground. So find you an organization that you attach to, that you connect to in some way or another, and, you know, figure out how you can support them.
Before we move further, and shout to Tamika Mowry, you're another co-founder in Until Freedom. I know you have a couple of others co-founders. I don't know their names exactly, but I love what you guys are doing.
Pinto and Linda Sarsour.
Okay, where can people invest in what you guys are doing? Please take a second to give an email address to somewhere where they can invest in the Until Freedom movement and help you guys who are on the ground, who are actively out there doing the work.
Well, let me look at our website. You can go, if you're on Instagram, then you can go to @UntilFreedom, and they have all the information, but I'm going to pull up so you can just kind of just give you like.
And I'll make sure when we release this, I put a link below in the description so that anybody who's watching this or listening to it on podcast form can go right there and invest in what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so you can follow us on Until Freedom on Instagram. Our website is www.untilfreedom.com. We have Venmo, Until Freedom, $ Until Freedom for Cash App. Our Venmo is @Until Freedom. So there's so many different ways. If you go to the website, then you'll see our mission statement. You'll see different initiatives we're taking on right now. We're in, like I said, on July 14th, we're going to do a direct action in Kentucky for Breonna Taylor. So, you know, that's our next initiative. We just really feel like, I feel like the women don't get as nearly enough, you know, of attention. You know, what happened to Breonna Taylor is is a catastrophe. You know, the woman was shot down by officers with a no-knock warrant for somebody who never lived there and who actually was in custody when they actually came to the house, and they shot through her home, 22 shots, and 8 of them went into her. They didn't know who was in the home. You know, her boyfriend at the time, after they kicked through the door, they never announced themselves. They never said anything. He thought it was being robbed. He shot 1 shot, which they returned over 20 shots. And, you know, it's legal to shoot a shot in your house if you're being robbed. He shot 1 shot, and they shot 22 shots, 8 of them into her. And still to this day, no one's been charged. One of the officers have been fired because he had a history of doing so many atrocities, and he actually supposedly disappeared after, and he didn't go in to do like a sobriety test to see if he was drunk or anything. So he's one of the scapegoats, but the person who issued the no-knock warrant issued it under false pretenses. He obtained it illegally. There was no need or right for them to issue it. The other officers who shot, you know, at least one of the other officers who shot, they said one of the officers shot 10 times. So another officer definitely overshot his rounds into the home. So there's so many different things with this case, you know, and we demand that the district attorney bring charges forward on this case. So we're going there to advocate for that on the 14th. So anybody who's in the Kentucky area or wants to travel, you can go to our website. We have volunteers who are going to be there, you know, and we're just trying to do the work.
Before we wrap up, I got a couple of last questions for you. Don Lemon, he recently, or earlier this year, he came out against celebrities not speaking up, celebrities not lending their voice to the cause. As we have seen, Dave Chappelle has recently released his comedy special, 8 minutes, 46 seconds, in response to that very claim. Do you feel that more celebrities should be stepping up? More people who have a platform, have a voice, have resources, have access should step up and do the work? Or is it like Chappelle said, the people are speaking for themselves? They're the ones making the change. Right now, let the celebrities do what they do, but the people are the ones who are moving the needle.
I think it's there's a lot to be said. I think no one has to do anything. I think, you know, I think you should want to. I think you should want to, even if you're not speaking up. You know, like I said, if you're not vocal, you know, there are a lot of people who I don't say anything about who are supporting us, you know, who aren't as vocal as most people would think. And they're like, why this person ain't saying this? But they'll call us and be like, hey, we know you need this. Here's 5,000. Here's 10,000 to do the travel here. We're going to bail out these individuals if people get locked up. We're going to, you know, certain things like that. There are people who support different ways. Everybody's not going to be vocal. Some people don't want to be, like you say, on the front lines. They don't want to take the scrutiny that comes with speaking up. You know, they have a following of people who don't really understand what this movement is. So they want to be able to still be funded and still make money and still be, you know, accepted in certain places as they support the movement's different ways. You know, for me, it's not for me to tell you how to support. I just say that you need to do something. I just feel like if you're a Black person in this time that we are in now, that you have to have some level of accountability to doing something to further in this movement. Whether you're vocal about it or not, it's not my you know, it's not my job to tell you if that's how you should contribute. But if you should feel obligated, especially if you're a Black person who has, you know, acclimated some level of success in this society, and more than likely it's because Black people ordained you, you know, and supported you, then I think you have some obligation to giving back to that community that has uplifted you. So, you know, whether it's vocal, whether you're speaking out about it, but maybe you don't need to speak out. Maybe you need to sit in those rooms with those white people who don't get it, and you educating them. If you're doing that and you ain't said nothing to publicly, I'm okay with that. If you educating those people and you making you getting needles pushed in different ways, you know, every move is not something that's loud. You know, all the strategic moves and the things that are going to be needed in this movement is not the most loudest move. So sometimes if you're doing it, it doesn't matter whether you do it in silence or not, but just make sure that you're doing something.
Well said. Well said. I love the fact that on your Instagram, you make it a point to work out, do public workouts. For you, especially in our community where Black people, and definitely Black men, we have a higher propensity of hypertension, high blood pressure, sugar, all kinds of things that affect us adversely than any other culture in the world. Is it important for you? Obviously, on one hand, you have your activism, but I love following you because I see you working out. I see you staying true to who Mysonne is with your Raise the Bar Fridays, and you're giving voice and giving a platform to so many undiscovered and aspiring hip hop artists around the world. Why are these things still important to you? And what is the message you're trying to push with those?
Oh man, it's very important, man. First of all, I want to say shout out to you. You look like you've been working out, man. You know, you're looking healthy, man. That's a good thing.
It is. I'm getting older. I have to.
Yeah, you know, and that's what it is for me. It's like in these times, especially during this COVID-19 situation, people were dealing with so much fear and trauma and stress and being inside their homes, and you know, and the only thing that I said to myself was, I know that, you know, no matter what virus or whatever's going on, the best way for me to prepare for that is to make sure that I'm healthy. You know, they saying they don't have any cure, they ain't got no vaccine, but I know the more healthier I am as an individual, the more healthier that we are as an individual, the less likely we are to die from any level of sickness. You know, so that's the mindset that when I started my work, I always was doing workouts, but it's like people are so scared about, oh, if I get this, well, if you get it and you ain't physically prepared to fight it, you know, then what happens then? We know that. We understand if your immune system they said it attacks a weak immune system. It attacks people who have pre-existing health issues. So what we need to do is make sure that we have as least of those things as possible. We're going to make sure that our body is strong. We feeding our body properly. Our immune system is strong. So regardless of what happens, we have a strong chance of fighting it. So that was my mind state when it came to working out. You know, you know, as we get older, we have to take care of our bodies so that our bodies can take care of us. That's just common sense. So, you know, there was a lot of people that were just home scared. And when I started to do the workout, I was getting so many people like, Dag, thank you, man. I feel much stronger. I feel more confident. I ain't even worried about no corona. Because, you know, I'm like, yo, if the corona get inside me, he going to have a problem, not me. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you got to see it, man. Like it's anything. It's like you boxing. You can't get in the ring scared of your opponent before you get in the ring because you already lost. Right. You know, so mind over matter. Like a lot of people mentally was being destroyed by just hearing the word COVID. You know, so that was the main thing with that. And then with Freestyle Friday was like, you know, the passion for just loving the art. You know, loving the lyrical ability, just doing that. And then it created something that people got away mentally. They came and enjoyed themselves. They looked forward to it. Artists, you know, wanted to get on there. Undiscovered artists, some artists that people knew just wanted to come on there and showcase. It was millions of people just in the house that wasn't doing anything. So, you know, this gave people outlet, man. You know, it was something that they could do, something they tuned into. People enjoyed it. So I just wanted to create as many things as possible during the quarantine that gave us levels of hope, that energized us, that fueled us, that made us feel good about ourselves. Because everything else, when you looked at the news, was shit that was just draining you and traumatizing you. My mother was calling me every day like, oh, this amount of people died, and you heard what they said. You could get it this way. And I'm like, Ma, we just got to work out. Drink some water. You know, make sure you're taking your vitamin C's, your elderberries. We're going to get out. We're going to work out. We ain't focusing on that. We're going to focus on positive. By the time this quarantine over, we're going to be so physically healthy and mentally strong that we ain't even focusing on that, you know. And that's what I wanted to give anybody that followed me, was positive reinforcement. You know, I didn't want to feed the fear like everything else was. You know, I know that's the way of the world. That's what, you know, people, of course, people want to know, they want to be informed, but sometimes too much negative information does nothing. It breaks down your immune system. People don't understand that when you intake too much negative energy and negative information, it breaks down your immune system.
Of course it does.
You don't even want to fight back. So you already at a disadvantage, you know. So I wanted to be the alternative to that, man. I was seeing that everywhere. I didn't want that, my page or people around me to have that energy.
You know, speaking of positive energy, you have now the coveted title of author to your name.
Oh yeah, man.
That's a beautiful title to have. Let's talk about it. I know my rights. Where did this come from?
Oh,
why did you feel the need to write this? Why now? What's the book about? Go into it in detail for our audience. And please tell us where we can go and buy it.
Oh man, shout out to McBride Collections, man. He reached out to a mutual friend of ours who Sasha, who I've known for years, and she was like, well, I have a person, he does books, he's a publisher, and he wants to do a book with you. So I was like, all right, you know, what does he want to do a book for? I was writing a memoir, you know, been going back and forth with that. I had no idea what kind of book he was talking about. So he's like, yo, he want to meet with you. So we met up in Harlem at Sylvia's. And he said, yo, I got an idea for you. I think it'll be just dope. He said, the work that you're doing is just amazing, you know, within the community. And a lot of these kids listen to what you're saying. I've heard you, it's moving. And, you know, and you come from, you know, the streets. And a lot of our kids are not aware of the Constitution, their rights, you know. And I think if you did a children's book, just breaking it down in a simpler form of just actually giving them what their rights are, just the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, just those are the most important ones that a lot of these kids could really benefit from. And immediately it just clicked. I was like, wow. He said, yeah, it's going to be an animated book, you know, and you could put colorful pictures. You can have your cartoons of yourself. And I was like, damn. I was like, wow, this really made sense, you know. So originally we had this conversation in, I think it was December or January. We wanted to release it for Black History Month. But I was running around doing the little things. I sat down in January, the late January, started writing it, and we finished at the end of January. So we didn't, all of the artwork wasn't done by February. So, you know, he did the artwork. These are actually my kids on here. This is my son.
Show that, brother.
This is my son, this is my youngest son, and this is my oldest son. So all three of them is my kids. Everybody else is pictures that he painted, but for the most part, you know, so we had to break down the artwork, and, you know, shout out to H.H. Pax, man. The artwork in this book is like phenomenal. Like, I love, it's like realistic, but it's cartoonish. Like, this is really me. Like, I look at this and be like, yo, this is really me. Like, it's, you know, the pictures really tell the story, you know, and it's and it breaks it down, man. And when I wrote the book, it took me about a week to do it. And we were supposed to release it during Black History Month, but there was a little complications with that. And then the quarantine, the pandemic hit. And so we was in the house that week. He's like, you know what, let's just release the book. You know, people ain't doing nothing anyway. Let's just release it. And the response that we've got from this book has just been, you know, it's just been overwhelming, man. Like, I appreciate everybody. It's such a family-orientated book, because most people, adults that was reading the book, was like, yo, I didn't even know this. I didn't know some of these rights. I didn't know, like, I was sitting down with my son and my daughter, and we was reading it, and I was like, damn, I didn't even know that these rights, we had these rights. I didn't even know that this was one of the Bill of Rights. I didn't know this article, you know, and it breaks down. It's like a family piece. Families sit around and they educate each other. You know, kids are educating parents like, Mom, you didn't know this? You didn't know this? You know that the Third Amendment says this or the Fourth Amendment says. So it's really a good book. Like, it's really a good. It's not just because I wrote it, but just based on the energy that has come from it. You know, everybody from Snoop Dogg, Lauren London, so many different artists have reached out to me, bought like 30 or 40 books, gave them to their family, like, yo, this book is important. A lot of educators, principals, superintendents have been calling me like, yo, we wanted to get this to our whole school. When school actually gets back, they want me to come do seminars for the book. So, you know, it's one of my babies, man. It's something that I'm proud of. I'm probably going to do another one, you know, just to continue on, but it's really something I'm proud of. We're going to probably do a cartoon based on it, but it's really something I'm really proud of. And it's on Amazon. You know, just go to Amazon, type in my name, and it should come in. It was #1 for about 3 or 4 weeks. I think
That's
this
beautiful.
week it was like, yeah, I think this week it was like #6, and it was #7 for the most wanted list. So it's still doing really good, you know, really good. We're doing really good with the book, and I'm proud of it.
You know, you should be proud of it. And I think this should be required reading, because I'm a Black man, I'm a father. And so many of us, like yourself, parents who are raising young Black children, we don't know what to tell them in this day and age. And so many of us need a refresher course ourselves on what our rights are. So I think it should be required reading. It should be something in the households of every Black and brown family to help educate our kids. What are your rights? If you get pulled over, what rights do you have? If a cop stops you in the streets and it's stop and frisk, what rights do you have? How are you supposed to react in that moment that you are speaking law, truth, and don't get yourself killed in the process? So I really believe this is required reading for every Black and brown family, but also the school systems across the board, like from 3rd to 12th grade.
Yeah,
it should be required reading. So I love the fact that you wrote the book. I think that it's easy to read. I love the animations, and just I'm very proud of you. I know you're proud of yourself, but just know we're all proud of you as well. Mice, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Mysonne NY General.
Okay, spell that out, because that's not an easy name. That's not like saying Steven.
Yeah, it ain't. It's Mysonne, MYSONNE, NY General, GENERAL on Instagram, on Mysonne on all other platforms, on Twitter, on Facebook. It's just Mysonne, MYSONNE.
Mice, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time, sharing your experiences, your wisdom. You know, I benefited from this interview, and I know my audience is going to benefit from it. You are welcome on the platform anytime. Please continue to do the great work that you're doing and inspiring all of us while making a change for all of us. You are a true power move maker. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me. And you keep doing what you're doing, man, giving us platforms. And like you've always done, man, you've always been an innovator in creating platforms for this culture and everybody who does something in this culture. So I want to give you your flowers, man. You deserve it, man. You have definitely been one of the main innovators in this culture. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, kid. What's up, guys? Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video. Truly appreciate you. If you like anything you heard here today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you know anybody that can benefit from this message, feel free to share. Peace and love.